This is I Was 8. I'm Larry Fedoruk. Welcome to a new episode of my personal journal storytelling podcast, Adventures of Growing Up in a Small Canadian Prairie Town. Next week, back to my obsession with toy cars. But now, a crime story. I Was 8.
Season 3, Chapter 9, Like Stealing Candy from a Drugstore.
It would never have occurred to me on my own to go out and steal something. I was 8. However, the word went out around the schoolyard that some of the other kids around regularly stole stuff from the stores downtown. Who would do that? Interestingly, the names we heard weren't just the usual suspects of hoods and thugs and goons and bullies and other ne'er-do-wells, but some people you would never suspect of stealing at all. Terry Reed, his sister Joan, the Von Hagen twins, Bruno Bukowski, recent valedictorian Greta Snark, Allison Tennyson, Frankie Mudd Jr., even Rolly Messner, and his family was rich. Why on earth would he need to steal? The list of thieves was so long, I wondered if anyone actually paid for anything anymore, and how the stores stayed in business if their inventory was just walking out the door, and how come no one was ever getting caught? Answer me that. Well, the answer, at least to that, came one recess from Susie Ponder's older brother, Mikey. You know the Barneses who live across from the hospital? Many years ago, they had a boy our age named Guy. The guy's name was Guy? Yeah. Was it short for something? I don't think so. Did he have a sister named Gal? No, shut up. Okay, sorry, go ahead. So a long time ago, before any of us were alive, Guy was caught stealing a dinky toy from the hardware store. He was taken to the RCMP detachment basement and beaten senseless, and then sent to a juvenile school, which is just a big jail, but you still had to learn school. And you had to sleep and eat in the jail, but there was no beds, you slept on a cement floor, and the food was dog food, and no one was allowed to visit you ever. And there's murderers in there, and this one time this guy tried to kill Guy. The other guy's name was also Guy? No, it was just some guy. And Guy ended up killing the other guy instead, so when he turned 18, he had to go to real jail, which was even worse, except you don't have to learn school. And he had to stay in there until he was like 30, so like the rest of his life. Wait a minute. Are you telling me they had dinky toys even before we were born? I don't know about that. The whole thing sounds suspicious now. It didn't matter. The story was told at recess, and the legend of Guy grew. Guy was the only kid in our town ever caught stealing and paid the ultimate price, jail school. Yet I began to think about stealing, even though the folklore of Guy was looming over us all. And even though I wasn't really rich like Rolly Messner, I had money. I didn't need to steal. Yeah, I had several sources of income, actually. I got an allowance. I did chores for people around town once in a while. Some of that work was pro bono because Mom said that's what good neighbors do. Crap. But, I got paid occasionally. Sunday family gatherings, you could always count on a drunken aunt or uncle who had felt bad for missing your birthday and slipped you some coinage. I knew where to look in the couch and the car for change that fell out of my dad's pants pockets. That was good for a buck or two. Mom, sadly, didn't have pockets. She had a pocket book, a.k.a. purse. Nothing ever fell out of there. I always wondered why Dad didn't just carry a purse. He wouldn't lose all those coins. I thought of suggesting it to him, but I needed the money. When you were desperate, you could always sell something. Hey, Philip, I'll sell you this almost like new tennis ball for 15 cents. That's not a good deal. Okay, 2 tennis balls for 25 cents. No good. Okay, 2 tennis balls, and I'll throw in this ping-pong paddle for free. The ping-pong paddle has no handle. It's broken. That's why I'm throwing it in. 2 almost like new tennis balls and a broken ping pong paddle for 25 cents. You're not going to find a deal like this anywhere else. Okay. So I had money. The other deterrent against me stealing from the Downtown Business Association, and it wasn't even really a deterrent, more like a disincentive, was the 10 Commandments. Well, not all 10, but thou shalt not steal. Big rule. Okay, it's in the second half, like number 8, but still, top 10, Catholic rule. And if you think about it, you'd have to covet before you steal, then probably lie about it. And by stealing, you've disobeyed mom and dad, so you're in for like 4 commandments for one item. Hardly worth it, is it? I mean, there's jail school and the eternity of hellfire and suffering. I think I'll just go dig in the couch some more. So what made me decide to try and steal something? Well, the stars aligned. Number 1, I was starting to have my doubts about the mythology around Guy. No guy would be named Guy. They made that up. Secondly, the commandments. You know, previously I've explained the Catholic concept of confession. You sin, but then you confess. Whip through a couple of Hail Marys, communion, you're clean. So big picture, I thought I could afford to break a few rules without having to spend the entire afterlife in Satan's living room. And thirdly, I was broke. Jobs had become scarce. The couch and car money dried up, don't know what happened there. On Sundays, aunts and uncles were suddenly and disturbingly sober. Couldn't sell anything. As a matter of fact, I had used some of my allowance to make a few purchases of my own. Impulse buys, really stupid. 20 cents for a big ball made of elastic bands. A quarter for 3 old Archie comics. 15 cents on a roll of caps for my cap gun. I gave Richard 50 cents for a rock he said had gold inside it. You know, a Pepsi here, a double bubble there, and suddenly you're flat broke. As I said, there were no jobs. Nobody was buying. The kid economy was in a terrible recession. More and more, I started thinking, how bad would it be to steal? Ultimately, the deciding factor was, everybody else is doing it. That's what I'd heard. Everybody else is doing it. Why can't I? Mom was fond of saying, if everybody jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? Well, how high's the bridge? Are we jumping into water? Is it a hot day? I like being one of the guys. What am I supposed to do up here on the bridge? Just stand here while everybody else down there is having fun? No, that's it. I'm stealing something. But what to steal? I had watched enough TV to know that when you steal something, the bigger it was, the worse it was. Well, I guess in some ways the better, but you know what I mean. For example, if you steal a car, that's really bad. I was 8. I couldn't drive. Well, I'm not sure. I never tried. Maybe I could, but I didn't need a car. I should steal something I really needed. I needed so many things. Toys, a new ping pong paddle, comic books, new ball glove, more marbles. Hold on. What is the answer to every tough question? Candy. I could steal some candy. Eat the evidence, the perfect crime. Grand theft candy. All I needed was a plan. Where could I steal some candy? The candy store? Well, no good. All the candy at Mamcher's confectionery was behind the counter and under the watchful eye of old man Mamcher. The grocery store had a small candy shelf, but it was right next to the cash register. Same with the gum display at the department store. The bank had a jar of mints on the counter free for customers. I wasn't one, so I'd have to steal a few of those. But that's almost bank robbery. No, I wasn't ready for that yet. Aha! The drugstore. Of course, the drugstore. They had a nice little candy shelf, chocolate bars, gum, lifesavers, only a foot or two off the ground, down an aisle between magazines and women's hosiery. Women's hosiery. Across from the Band-Aids, as I recall. This could work. First job, recon mission. Case the joint. I mean, I pretty much knew the drugstore by heart, but I thought it was wise to do a walk around. First move was to walk right up to the counter and say good morning to Mrs. Needle. A brilliant move, really. Would such a nice, polite young man as this steal anything? Of course not. Good morning, Mrs. Needle. Yes, it is a beautiful day. Could we use some rain? Well, I never thought of that. Perhaps. I like rain. Just going over to the hosiery section to look at some magazines. The magazines section to look at the hosiery. Magazines. Well, have a lovely day. The only other person there was the druggist, and he was way in the back making drugs. Later that day, under the big tree at the back near our garage, it was already summer break, I decided that the caper was actually going to go down Wednesday morning. Wednesdays were quiet at the drugstore, and as I recall, sometimes Mrs. Needle had to be in the back helping the druggist make the drugs. I thought of telling someone about the plan so at least someone knew, in case I got caught and beaten in the basement of the RCMP detachment, then sent off to jail school to meet Guy. Couldn't think of anybody trustworthy enough to only tell my parents and not the rest of the town. So instead, I wrote a note. Dear Mom and Dad, sorry for stealing. I'll see you again in about 10 years, unless I have to kill someone in prison, 'cause then it will be later. Your friend, Larry. I hid the note at the bottom of my sock drawer, where years later, after I had been missing for so long, they would have assumed I had grown out of my socks and clean out the drawer and find the note. I pictured the drugstore candy shelf in my mind. I knew I couldn't steal an O. Henry or any other candy bar, too big. How would I get it out of the store? Same thing with the big bags of candy or the Twizzlers. Gum would be good, but hardly worth risking my life and freedom over a pack of gum, even though juicy fruit is quite delicious. Aha! I could picture them. Lifesavers. Butterscotch. On the right near the bottom. Perfect. I rode my bike downtown, better than walking, faster getaway, parked across from the drugstore, and just watched it for about 15 minutes. Had to make sure it was all normal and there was no cops. Also, I was using the time to work up my courage. I was sweating like my fat Uncle Walter. All right, time to go in. I pedaled across the street and leaned the bike against the wall of the drugstore, pointing towards home so that when I ran out I could just jump on and gun it. Spent a couple of minutes trying to stop sweating. Finally walked in. Good morning, Mrs. Needle. Yes, it's a lovely day. I hope we get some rain. Just going to look at some magazines this morning and perhaps pick up some Band-Aids for home. I went to the aisle, flipped through some Mad magazines. It was time to steal. I had realized that if I just reached for the candy, my back would be to the area of the cash register, and I couldn't see if anyone was watching me. So I had my back to the candy shelf. While watching for Mrs. Needle, I reached behind me, felt around, grabbed the roll of Lifesavers, shoved them down the back of my pants. Oh, and not just the pants where they could fall out, but right into my gotchis so they'd be secure. Done. Time to vamoose. I ran out of the store and jumped on my bike, heart beating like a rabbit, pedaling steady for about 3 blocks before I even looked behind me. No one. Good. I was clear. I sat on the bike seat for a while to glide, but felt the Lifesavers shifting, if you know what I mean. Didn't want any kind of candy insertion to occur in that particular area, especially after I'd worked so hard to get it. Got home, threw the bike down, bolted up to my room. I reached into my underwear and tossed the ill-gotten gains onto the bed. There it was, my loot. A roll of black licorice beech nut cough drops. Oh no. No Lifesavers. No butterscotch. Just disgusting beech nut. And it's not like I could just return them. Hello, Mrs. Needle. I'd like to exchange this item. I have no receipt because I stole the wrong candy. Also, they've been in my underwear. These things were not even close to candy. At least the Smith Brothers cough drops tasted like candy, the cherry ones. These were disgusting and shouldn't even be allowed near candy. I couldn't eat them. I wouldn't eat them. Couldn't even fence them, not even to that idiot Philip. So quickly, I shoved them back into my underwear, grabbed the note from my sock drawer, ran down to the garage and got a garden trowel. I rode my bike to the field that ran along the high school baseball diamond. No one could see you from there. I dug a deep hole, threw the beech nuts in there along with the ripped-up note, covered it up, raced home, washed the trowel off with the garden hose, and then back in my room, where I declared my life of crime to be over. I exhaled for about 10 minutes. I've never stolen anything since. Well, maybe I ate a couple of grapes while grocery shopping, but that's it. And as far as the rest of the commandments, minimal lying, I'm pretty proud of that. Coveting and adultery, rather not say. False idols? Yeah, probably bought most of their albums. I lost the concept of hell and the Sabbath many years ago. I'd say I'm batting around 500. Makes me a bad Catholic. But in baseball, 500, I'd be a superstar. Baseball. Now there's a religion. And you're allowed to steal.
I Was 8 is a weekly storytelling podcast written, produced, and voiced by Larry Fedoruk. A new episode every Thursday on all major platforms or Larry's I Was 8 YouTube channel. Tell a friend about his podcast and reach out to Larry Fedoruk, that's Fedoruk, at larryfedoruk37@gmail.com.